Hey, Adam,
Geez,
one
why,
thing.
why do you think they're called bumpers, Gary?
I don't know.
Because they come at the beginning, at the end, like bumpers.
Alex, you're a marketing guy. Do you like that design behind Paul? Does that sweet logo thing look pretty cool to you?
Hey, I forgot to hit the record button.
Yeah, that's really professional, isn't it?
Well, this is a professional podcast.
I met her in a parking lot and was handed 2 little Yorkies. And the only person I knew that knew Yorkies was Paul. So I called Paul and said, Paul.
Sweet Talk is a weekly 20-minute podcast brought to you by the Continuing Education and Workforce Training Division of Idaho State University's College of Technology. Find us on Apple Podcast, Spotify, and SoundCloud, and subscribe today. Now it's time to get started with Sweet Talk.
Good morning, everyone, or evening, or whatever time you're listening to this. Once again, thank you for joining us here at Idaho State University's Continuing Education and Workforce Training for our weekly podcast, Sweet Talk. And I am Paul Dickey, one of your co-hosts, the video instruction manager and apprenticeship coordinator here at Sweet. And as always, joining me is our illustrious leader, Gary Salazar, the director. Gary, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great, and I'm getting less illustrious all the time, Paul. Thank you for the intro. How are you today?
I am doing fine today. As our audience kind of knows, we typically record these on a Friday if we can, and it's Friday, and I'm really excited for the weekend.
Oh yeah, and it's kind of wet and cold outside, but that hasn't stopped all of us from coming into work. And we have Angela Wilhelm, our marketing coordinator, joining us today. Angela, how are you doing?
I am doing very well. Gary is right. It is rainy, and it will be freeze tonight. So be safe, everybody. If you're in some of these Idaho roads, it will melt and freeze like it typically does this time of year.
Yeah, absolutely. Great reminder. And Paul and Angela, we have a wonderful guest today. I think this was arranged because we have this emergency medicine conference coming up, and they have a keynote speaker, Shaun Pitts, who's joining us. Shaun, welcome aboard. How are you today?
I'm doing great. Unlike your guys' wet, our wet is a little colder, which is equaling about 2 to 3 inches of snow currently following here in Spokane.
Excellent.
So we're getting, as we call, second winter in Spokane. So got some snow. It's a little wet and slick outside, but it's beautiful nonetheless. So thank you guys very much for having me on.
Hey, thank you. Go ahead, Paul.
Yeah, are you in today, Shaun? You don't have to drive anywhere, right?
I am in the office today, which is fine.
Oh,
so
okay.
I left my career fire job this morning about 7 a.m., came into the office and put in a couple hours here, and then we'll go home and hang out with the family in the snow.
Excellent.
Hey, sounds nice. And for those of you, I'd like to give a short intro. We have a little bio on our guest day. Shaun is going to become a keynote speaker for our upcoming emergency medicine conference here at the end of April. Shaun presently is the head of education for something called EMSConnect and an Advanced EMT Firefighter in Spokane. He will talk about what that is here in a few minutes. He is, while still practicing pre-hospital medicine for, I think, over 13 years, it says. He was also a senior EMS instructor in Washington State, as well as a American Heart Association instructor for a variety of different courses, BLS, PALS, ACLS. He's affiliate faculty with NAEMT, and he teaches PHTLS. I don't know what these are, Shaun. You'll have to explain them to me. And TCCC. He is, and this is something exciting for all of us, he's also a host of a podcast called EMSConnect on Shift. So we'd like to learn more about that from him as well. Welcome, Shaun. Thank you for taking the time to be with us today and for joining us all the way from north of us. Sorry to hear your weather's like that is, but we're all looking forward to spring. Glad to have you here. Let's get started. Tell us a little bit about what your background is and what you are presently involved in.
Absolutely. Again, thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it. So again, my name is Shaun Pitts. My career started fairly early in EMS. I got my EMT in 2006. Initially started with a ground transport agency north of Spokane, rural-based medicine. The ambulance company was volunteer-based, covered just over 700 square miles with 2 volunteer-based ambulances that were staffed. So the patient care is long transport times and very rural based. And so got a lot of great experience early on in my career. Spent about 2 years as an EMT, moved on to advanced EMT. Back then it was the EMT-I or EMT intermediate. And then of course we've transitioned over to the advanced EMT level. So spent the rest of my career still currently practicing as an advanced EMT, and was working ambulance based, got into education. I tell people literally I got tricked into it. I was teaching American Heart Association, CPR courses. I had a friend that wanted me to teach some ongoing education. We call it OTEP here in Washington State, but continuing education nonetheless. And then she called and said, hey, we had a last minute call in sick for this EMT class in, I can't remember what town it was in. Would you mind just stepping in and kind of, teaching the EMT class for the night? And had never done it before, was super excited about that. So I jumped into it, got to class and was asking some questions about, the class had just started and how many students and who was their normal instructor. Well, they kept saying, well, you're our normal instructor. And what I didn't realize is I had literally been duped into, I became the instructor for the EMT class. I was not just stepping in for one day. I was getting tricked into being there for the duration of the class. So I send that credit in a joking side, but got started doing EMS education. That transitioned to, I ran an EMT program here in Spokane, Washington for just over 10 years. Amazing opportunity where I got to train just over 1,000 EMT providers or EMS providers that went all across the country, which was amazing. It was an absolute great experience. And then transitioned over, I got hired here at EMSConnect, and we're a web-based platform that does continuing education for EMS providers all across the country. All of our content is CAPCE approved. If you're unfamiliar with that, it's a national accrediting organization that allows you to use those hours anywhere on your NREMT profile. Most of the states accept that as well. And so got a chance to kind of get my name out here on the national platform. Had a passion for podcasting, had listened to some podcasts, and so launched my own podcast called EMSConnect on Shift. It's been going for just over a year and a half now. Had some great speakers, great stories, had the chance to interview national speakers as well as some local speakers. As an EMS provider, I got some episodes that are just earth-shattering on the emotion side, on the, just amazing stories. I just finished one up that just went up last week with a friend of mine that we called it When Your Off-Duty Life Crashes with Your On-Duty Life. And this individual had the opportunity to come upon a car wreck, applied a tourniquet to a man that had a leg amputated, literally saved this man's life, which was amazing. And then tragically, a year later, had to do CPR on her own husband in her own home that sadly didn't survive the incident. But she sits down with me and talks about all sides of that, what it's like to be on the opposite side of EMS, what it's like to be the family, what it's like to watch us perform in the field. I mean, it's earth shattering. So it's been an amazing experience, and I'm excited to start speaking at conferences. I've spoken at a few conferences. I tend to attend the Grangeville Spring Fling. I've been there a couple of times. In fact, just finished up the keynote last weekend, and then getting to join your guys' conference the end of April, first part of May, I think. So
right.
I'm excited.
Super.
Nice.
That's a heck of a resume you've just gone through there. What a level of experience you're bringing to us. Thank you so much. Thank you for all the things you're doing to help all those folks who are in need out there, and then also for helping to spread the wealth of education that we need for the training that has to go on and continue, and all the updates that have to happen. Just that in itself is a huge job. So it sounds like you're on point and helping us continue to spread those stories. So amazing work on your part, Shaun. And thank you for joining us. And thank you for saying yes to be the keynote speaker for our emergency medicine conference here. Sorry, Raylyn can't join us today. Raylyn is the health programs coordinator here at Continuing Ed Workforce Training. She's helping lead that conference development. And but we do have some great other questions that we want to ask you. So you've led us into a few. And one of them I was going to ask you, but we can get back to it, was about the any amazing guests you've had. You've already talked about one here. How often does your podcast go, the one that you've been hosting?
Yeah, so I had great aspirations kicking off my podcast of putting out an episode a week, but as the host, the production person, the editing person, the organization person, all is
Mhm.
me. That has kind of dwindled down to, we try to kick out about 1 to 2 podcasts a month.
Okay.
Our podcasts are a little bit longer. I'll tell you, most of our podcasts go at least an hour. Some of the stories take a little bit longer than an hour to kind of unpack. And when we come back to the other speakers I've had on, I'll give you a couple other great examples of some speakers that, of course, I mean, we get started and we just talk until we feel like we're out of things to talk about. So,
Right.
but yeah, 1
Yeah.
to 2 a month is kind of our goal.
Yeah.
Nice.
Super
So-
job with that.
So, Shaun, what made you decide that you wanted to do a podcast? I mean, you're an emergency medicine person. You've worked in the field. You're teaching. What made you say, "Hey, podcast"?
Yeah, so a couple things. Number one, I love educating, and you rambled off those, ACLS and PALS and PHTLS,
Mhm.
and if it has an alphabet associated with it, I've probably taught it or at least ventured into it. But podcasting is such an, we lead busy lives, and not everyone can attend conferences every single year, and so there's this whole world of this audio-based education that maybe you get credit for, maybe you don't get credit for your research, but I wanted people to understand that just because you can't get credit for it doesn't mean it can't benefit you as a provider. And so there's this whole platform of amazing people that can sit down and bring people on. Some of us have long drives to and from work, or, when I got into podcasting myself, I was training for a half marathon. And so I was running and I didn't like listening to music while I was running. And so I would turn a podcast on, and now you're exercising
yeah.
your brain and your body, and and so I wanted to provide that to the best that I could, to kind of give back to that same podcasting community that helped, my education level. And so I thankfully work for an individual that was very, very supportive and was like, absolutely, let's get you set up. And I got all this great equipment, and so I might as well use it and mess around with it and see what I can break. So
Absolutely. So, have you found us doing our podcast? We found that we've actually created this inner community and networked very well with some of our guests that has, actually create these great relationships. Have you found that to be true as well?
Yeah, a couple, early on in the podcast, I thought that getting presenters on would be expensive. So I didn't reach out to anybody except for friends. And I had a couple friends that had unique stories or unique experiences and relationships that were already pre-built. And then one day I just kind of got that whim and was like, I wonder if I asked one of these national people, for example, Joshua Chase is out of Norfolk, Virginia. He wrote this book called Jump Seat Leadership. I had read it. It's about leading from the jump seat, not being a lieutenant, just basically, leading in whatever position you're in. And I kept thinking, like, the book was so great. I really enjoyed it. Reached out to him on social media and was like, all right, how much would it cost for me to have you on my podcast? And he was like, it's free. And I was totally blown away. And so I was like, I wonder if other people are like that. So I reached out. Tanya Glenn's another national speaker. She works, does post-traumatic stress disorders for EMS providers. She's based out of Texas. And so, she's published all kinds of stuff. She's all these programs. I reached out to her and was like, okay, like you're a pretty big deal. How much is this going to cost? She's like, it's free. And so I just found out that you reach out to these people and they don't mind. And again, it's such a unique platform because they can do this from their home. There's no travel, there's no room. There's like, they're willing to donate you 30 or 60 minutes of their time. And now it's great because I follow these people on social media and check in with them and listen to their other podcasts and the different shows they're on. It's just been an amazing opportunity to build great relationships all across the country. And you've never shaken hands with these people, which is just amazing.
Yeah.
It is amazing that, from anywhere from a local to across the country, across the globe, to get people to come on your show. And, and a lot of people are happy to do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Podcasts
So-
are an amazing thing. And Paul's so right that to help us develop new relationships. And every now and then I get into a conversation with somebody and they go, hey, I wish. And I go, well, we had this person on, why don't we get you in touch with them? So I love this more and more every time we do that. Sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, the thing is, going back to EMT, emergency medicine, what got you into it in the first place? I mean, I can't imagine doing that type of work. So what drove you to it?
Yeah, so my dad was a paramedic here in Spokane County for my entire life. So started in the 80s. We had some flight services here in Spokane. And he was a flight paramedic. This is literally all I've ever known. My entire life, my dad, worked 24-hour shifts. And early on in my life, my dad worked for the ambulance company and then transitioned to the flight side. And so I grew up, literally in the back of an ambulance. My dad would do sporting events, standbys, and they would smuggle all of us kids in the back of these ambulances and take us to monster trucks and rodeos. And so I grew up. What's interesting though is, if people that are in EMS understand that some of our times our families struggle with the time we're away from home and so on. So even though I grew up in it, I didn't really like my dad being away that much. And so early on in my life, I was like, I never want to do this. This isn't something I want to do. I wasn't a big school person. I didn't like high school. I didn't do great in high school. And so I kind of associated all education with, force-fed education. So I got out of high school. I was a stick framer building custom homes for a couple of years. I'm a big hockey fan. I played hockey most of my life. And so I was a Zamboni driver at the local ice rink for 3 years. And then one day it was one of the weirdest things. I was like, that's it. Maybe I'll take an EMT class. I'm going to hate it because it's education. I don't want to sit in a classroom. And day one of the class, I was in love, and that literally the rest is history. I submerged myself in the job. I was pulling all kinds of shifts. And then, my dad ran a paramedic program for 9 years here in Spokane. And I was like, education is something I never want to do. I was just going to work the ambulance the rest of my life.
Right.
And then so far, most of the things I said I would never do, here I am doing them. So, here we are with a long career, blessed by lots and lots of people who have mentored me and helped me be the provider and the educator I am. So I got the best job in the world, and here I get to give back to that community. So
Sean,
Excellent.
since you were reluctant to, consume education, do you find that your past helps you teach? Do you know,
Yeah.
kind of find a way to speak to your students?
Yeah, absolutely. I love outreach, and we used to go to high school classes when I was running the EMT program and try to get people, a workforce and training education conference or, some sort of get together. And I used to grab these kids and be like, here's the deal. I was you. My GPA is not good enough to get into most elementary schools, to be quite frankly honest. So, you would go to these kids and say, here's the deal, a trade, right? Come take an EMT class. And I always say you're gambling 3.5 months of your time with $1,600, and if you don't like the education that you get, you've wasted 3.5 months and $1,600 of your money. You're walking away with a life skill that very well could save the lives of a friend or a family member down the road. So really, you're not wasting anything, to where you hear about people going to, and I'm nothing against four-year education. Someone who gets a career path that they're $100,000 in debt and they feel like they got the certificate that means nothing to them. But I've never talked to a provider in the EMS world like that. And so we'd always try to get just try us out. If nothing else, you gain a life skill that could change the lives of someone you love or a complete and total stranger.
Right.
Now, I have a question for you, Shaun. You've talked quite a bit about you educating. That comes through what you're currently doing, as well as your podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about why, the EMC, the Emergency Medical Conference, is important, and what role speakers like you play in conferences like that?
Yeah. So, it's podcasting on a more personal setting, right? There's still, COVID changed so much for us with education and outreach. And, in Washington State, man, if you mentioned online education pre-COVID, they were like, oh, there's no way that will ever work. And now we're doing complete courses online, and so conferences, I think, are such a huge vital piece, because not only do you go and you get educated on a one-on-one level, you can shake hands with the speaker, you can raise your hand, you can engage them, whatever the case might be, but then you're connecting and networking with hundreds of other providers that might be from your area, or maybe from completely outside your area. I think conferences are great, but I think the get-togethers and the drinks and the dinners and stuff that happen the nights after the conference, that's unmatched anywhere else, right? We're sitting there and networking and talking about what we do in our agency, and then you exchange phone numbers and social media platforms and business cards, and then now you're networking all across the board, all across the country, and you're making EMS. Everyone always says, one team, and think like that's what makes this team and this job so great. Like I don't think realtors have a conference that 400 providers or 400 realtors get together and talk about selling houses, on a yearly basis. But look at EMS providers in medicine, with hundreds of us getting together and sitting down in a room together, learning and educating and asking questions and bouncing ideas off each other, I think is just an amazing part of what we do. And I would never want podcasting to take over conferences. I would never want even our platform, online education. That's never to take place of a great conference. That's just to get you through until the next great conference that you can attend and network with other people.
Great,
Yes.
great.
Yeah, well said too. Hey, Shaun, you've had such a great litany of things that you've talked about here, but unfortunately, our timer went off. Yeah, and our time is over.
That went way
We haven't-
faster than you.
we
Paul tried to
haven't-
warn me. That's
Yeah.
not fair.
Yeah,
I know.
I
This
warned
is-
you.
This
goes-
is the hook that Paul set in long ago, what we're going to do. But before we do go, we absolutely want to give our guest, want to give you, Shaun, an opportunity to talk to anybody who's listening out there about your podcast. And we think that's important that we get that word out there. Would you mind sharing how somebody might be able to get in touch with you or find that podcast?
Yeah, absolutely. So a couple ways. The podcast, first off, uploaded on, I think, most of the major podcasting platforms. So you can find us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Stitcher are your four big, main podcasting platforms. You're looking for EMSConnect on Shift. There's no other EMSConnect anything else. So if you start typing in EMSConnect, it pops up. It should be a picture of our little recording studio. Give us a like, give us a follow, download our episodes. We've got amazing speakers. We've got Joshua Chase from North Fork, Mike Helmbach from Seattle King County Medic 1 talking about the creation of high performance pit crew CPR here in Washington State that of course went national. Some of what he talks about is what I'm talking about at the conference with fundamentals of cardiac arrest is one of the talks I'm doing with your guys' great conference. Amazing speakers. Caitlin talked about her off-duty life, crashing with her on-duty life. Just amazing stories. Some are a little less EMS related and just kind of general. And a lot of them are directly related to EMS content. And then, of course, our web-based platform education is EMSConnect. If you look up emsconnect.org, you can see our website. You can sign up. I'll be at the conference. I'll have lots of flyers and giveaways and demos and things like that for that product. And then on social media, follow us on Facebook, Instagram at EMSConnect. You can reach out to us. I manage those accounts. So if you want to message me, you're more than welcome to. But yeah, that's kind of how you wrote me down to some sort of communication before or after or during the conference. So,
and I'll tell you, just in that little speech, I found you on, it was very easy. I found you on my Apple podcast.
Perfect.
Just while you were talking.
It really does. The nice thing is there's nothing else. You get to EMSConnect and there's nothing else like us. So at least it pops up. You don't have to sift through other things. So
yeah, I found it and I followed Shaun.
Perfect. Well, give me some feedback. Listen to some episodes. Like I said, that one, the off-duty life crashing with your on-duty life is I've had some people walk up and been like, listen, you need to have some kind of warning that involves tissues or not watch or listen to this while you drive because it's a rough episode.
Yeah. No. I plan on listening in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well,
hey,
we're there, Paul. Hey, first off, we got to thank Shaun again for taking the time to be on our podcast here. And for those of you who had a chance to listen, I recognize it was short, But boy, it's exciting, and it gives you an opportunity to go check out some passion that he has for the things that he's teaching in a world that he's been involved with, where he never wanted to do, but then,
Here I am.
dude, you did, and now here you are, and you're excelling in a field that needs so much publicity and promotion out there, so other people get aware of it, and other people start taking those classes. So thank you again, Shaun Pitts, for coming on board. Paul, thank you. Angela, thank you again. It's time to wrap this up.
Yeah. Hey, thank you so much, Shaun. We should have you on again post conference.
I'm on board.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe we can do a little cross, we'll have you on my podcast, all of us, and we don't have any 20-minute timers. We can talk for hours. It'll be great.
Tacos.
Yeah, no, that would be great. I would, Gary would tell you I'm a ham, and I would definitely go in for that.
Perfect. I'm all in.
All right. So if anyone wants to contact us, they can email us at cetrain.isu.edu. They can visit our website to see what we have for class offerings at cetrain.isu.edu, and give us a call if you want to inquire about that as well at 208-282-3372. I almost forgot that.
3372.
3372. And of course, if you like this podcast, please like, subscribe, share, and check out Shaun's podcast. He's got his podcast, and another thing to listen to.
Yeah,
Hey,
EMSConnect on shift. Cool.
Yeah, and I can't leave with us, Gary. I can't do this without you, man.
Oh, you're awesome.
All right, thank you so much, Angie. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And Gary, take us out, man.
Okay, everybody, thank you for joining us, and all of you, especially during this winter, you all be safe out there. Thank you.